never lose faith, y'all. There's a little girl from, Northridge, California, who had always been around the arts and almost kind of turned her back on the gift, but found my way back to it because God said, this is what I have for you, Tina. I haven't given you all these gifts and talents just to say you're another person that likes to sing, that likes to dance. Like, I have something that I specifically am calling you to do in the season that I say you need to do it. And you just need to keep your tools sharp and be ready. And that's how I live my life.
Self-quarantining.
The quarantine order.
Quarantined in their...
Held in quarantine.
Quarantine.
The quarantine in place.
Quarantine for the required 14 days.
Hey, what's up, people? Welcome to another episode of Quarantine Talks. I am JC, your host, interviewer with the mostest per viewer, whatever. Y'all, I really missed the thing that I used to do where I was like using the Mr. Rogers theme. However, the way money is set up in licensing, since I have relatively neither, especially on the licensing, I can't do it no more, y'all. But it was such a good intro. We gonna figure something out. Anywho, today I have the pleasure of having the founder and CEO of Stage Ready LLC, Miss Tina Fears, on my show. All right, we are going to discuss her entertainment origins, from working and recording with some of the producers for the likes of Mariah Carey and Michael Jackson at a very young age, to moving to Atlanta from Los Angeles and how much of a culture shock that was. And then we talk about founding Stage Ready, her production and talent management agency, while still managing to be talent herself. That's an interesting conversation. Then we get into stage plays and productions with folk like Brittany Inge from Boomerang on BT and Brian Jordan Jr. from Tyler Perry's Sisters. How the homegrown Aretha Franklin stage play that she put on at the Aurora Theater turns into her landing a role in the new Nat Geo biopic or biopics. Still, jury is still out on that. Somebody help me. For Auntie Aretha. And finally, how quarantine has rekindled her passion for painting. This is a very uplifting and inspiring episode, guys. Stay tuned. We're about to get into it. Let's go. And ladies and gentlemen, once again, welcome to another episode of Quarantine Talks. I am JC, and today I have with me a young lady. She is an actress. She is an artist. She is a public speaker. She's a choreographer. She's a director. She's a producer. She's a lady that wears superb wigs and flawless hairstyles. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, Miss Tina Fears. How are you today?
I'm wonderful. Come on, intro.
So normally, I usually start people with the question. Give them, who you are, where you're from, and what you do. So we already kind of talked about the who, but where are you from and what do you do, Ms. Fears?
I'm from Los Angeles, California, really the Valley, Northridge.
Valley?
Yeah, Valley girl, little Valley girl.
Mm-hmm.
But Atlanta has been home for me for a minute. My family relocated here around the time I was in middle school. So I always tell people I'm a Cali girl with sweet tea in my veins because I very much rep ATL. It's home for me. It will always be home, but never forget my California roots. So like most people who live in Atlanta, they're transplants. Very few people are really from Atlanta, but I just stayed here for a minute.
Right. Same here. I'm part of that. I'm part of that too. So I'm from a little bit of everywhere: DC, North Carolina, Boston.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. What brought you out east?
My family moved. There was that last big, I keep saying the last big earthquake, which was so long ago, but there was a big earthquake right before the Olympics here in Atlanta. And my family was just like, ooh, we tired. It was in California.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, wait, what?
Back it up. So there was a big earthquake in LA in like 94, 95. We had the Olympics here in 96. So right before the Olympics, that was kind of like, those are milestones for me that kind of helped me remember like when the transition happened. So the big earthquake in LA, we moved here right before the Olympics. My parents just, cost of living is crazy in Los Angeles. It's always been crazy. It's still crazy now. But they always wanted to expose their children to the South, and just being in a beautiful, at that time, Atlanta was just really on the brink of what we know it to be now.
Right.
As far as opportunity for creatives and all that good stuff. And my parents had been on the West Coast for a minute and just kind of got burnt out by it and decided to up and move. And it was funny because when I was in early elementary school, I did a report on the state of Georgia. And so I knew like the state flower and the flag and all this kind of stuff, not knowing that, really a year or so later we would be relocating here. So my family said it was time to go. So we packed up and planted roots in ATL.
Now, is your parents from Cali too, or are they from over this way?
No, my parents are actually both from Ohio.
Oh, wow.
Didn't know each other in Ohio, but both went out west pursuing the entertainment industry and goals and dreams. It's kind of like if you were talented and creative, you either went to New York or LA. And so at that time, a lot of Black people were migrating out west. And so they both went to Los Angeles, West Coast, with various dreams and passion kind of in the industry, and met there and lived there for many years prior to having my sister and I, and, had us, and then said, you know what, it's time to change up. So it's kind of like you remember when a lot of people were saying Charlotte was like the new Atlanta, and they were moving from Atlanta to Charlotte and kind of trying to explore that, starting businesses. It really didn't happen.
Right.
But I remember a lot of people kind of talking about that being the new place. So at that time, Atlanta was the new Mecca for Black people to go and, make some things happen. So that's kind of how they got that way.
Okay. Because my mom's side is from Raleigh, North Carolina.
Okay.
And so I always feel like when the first time I went to Charlotte, I was like, this kind of feels like a baby Atlanta. So that kind of makes sense.
Okay. So then that's a true statement then. Okay.
Yeah, it's like, it feels like a very baby Atlanta. It's like, oh, okay, I feel a little bit of the vibe. It's not full on, but it's like, it's not that far away. Southern, so yeah, I could understand that. Yeah.
So is it more so like the cultural, like hospitality, or is it upwardly mobile African American people? Kind of upper middle class vibe. Like, what gives you that Atlanta essence about Charlotte?
It's kind of like a mix of all three. Just like I would say, like the way that the city is kind of built and constructed as well, kind of feels like that too. It gives you, without the entertainment vibes, but Charlotte it does have a lot of banking there, has a lot of business, a lot of middle class. So yeah, I think it's just a mixture of both. Like I said, it's very Atlanta on a small scale.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I have family who left Ohio recently, within like probably the past 5 years, that have migrated down, because we were the only ones that were really, this far south, and have started businesses in Atlanta. My cousin works for, why can't I think of the name? The Panthers, Carolina Panthers.
Okay.
So she works front office there. And then my uncle her dad has a really high-end men's clothing store in Charlotte. And so they kind of, her job brought her there, the NFL did, but, again, kind of trying to figure out what that new next place is going to be.
Right.
So they figured we were here in Atlanta, they would do Charlotte.
Okay.
Now, let me just make note, though, we're doing the podcast. I am a mommy in every sense of that word. So you might hear my son kind of making his way through. You're getting the essence of who Tina Fears is right now.
Okay.
So he's gonna be walking through. He knows I'm doing an interview though, but you might hear him chiming, coming in from riding his bike. So
okay, that's fine. Hey, I mean, it is what it is. We at home right now, so
Yeah, here.
And so like, what was that? So you were what, 14, 15 when y'all made that move?
Yeah, I was like really going into middle school. So I was like 7th, 8th grade. I try not to give too many dates, but like late elementary going into middle school, around that time.
Okay. And so what was that? What was that culture?
Oh, culture shock. all the way, like, in every test. Yeah, because the Southern drawl that you hear, you know, in my voice and the kind of Atlanta essence in how I speak, none of that was there. You know, I wasn't just a Black girl from California. I was a Black girl who grew up in the Valley.
Right.
So bringing that to where everybody was saying, you know, shout it, you know, I don't even think I can say it right anymore, but it was just very, very different. And on top of where you are as a young person, kind of figuring yourself out, transitioning from elementary to middle school, and the awkwardness that comes with all of that. And, you know, not just moving to a new school, but moving to an entirely different part of the country. Right. It was just a culture shock. And we were accustomed, my sister and I were accustomed to being the only little chocolate faces with big ponytails and puffs in the room. Whereas I'm going into a classroom now where everybody in the classroom looks like me and my teachers. Like, you know,
not in Atlanta.
Exactly. So what people don't understand about Cali, the Latinx community and just how diverse it is, and that's one thing that I will always love about being from the West Coast, is just being exposed to so many different cultures at an early age. That was our normal. You know, our normal was being in the room with people from all over the world. You know, I had Korean friends. I had friends that were, you know, from Romania. I had just a wide range of diverse cultures around me. And then you go into, you know, these classrooms where everybody in the room looks like me, which was dope because I always wanted that. You know, that's something our parents wanted us to make sure we experienced. But that was a big transition. It was scary, to be honest with you. But we navigated. You know, we were relentless and made it through, and it was a great a season of teaching for us, for sure.
What was scary about it? That's an interesting word to use.
It was scary because I think whether you're a child, a teenager, or an adult, really being able to find your space, your place where you fit, not necessarily fit in, but just a safe space where you can be completely who you were. So I spoke very different from all the rest of the students. I was always very outgoing, very talented, even as a small child. So for me, there was like this kind of insecure space where, you know, do I completely be who Tina is? Or do I try to be what I think is acceptable amongst my peers, you know? Okay. And that's something that kids go through all the time, whether they're relocating or just, you know, think about all the kids who were going from elementary to middle school and didn't have a chance to really complete their school year. Right. And what they think is like, okay, I'm ready. You know, they're kind of going to just be thrown into that. So that was scary for me, you know, as a elementary school student. You know, the classroom setup was very different. The educational system on the West Coast is a lot more fast paced than it is here. You know, we went to school year round. On the West Coast. So it was just a lot of change at one time, drastic change. And for me, you know, honestly, it was a little terrifying.
I can understand that. Yeah. When I moved a little later than you did. My mom moved. She didn't want me to go to high school in DC. Okay. So she moved us to North Carolina, and that was a huge. I'm talking about like DC used to Black people, so I mean, like, you know, DMV area. But it was different. Like more white people I think I had ever been around in my life. And then like the weird. You know, even now, I'm just coming to understand it in my 30s. I didn't really start to get into my late 20s, like the whole thing about, you know, like Confederate flags and the Civil War and like just all of that. It was just so foreign to me. Like I really couldn't. It took me a while to get it, like, you know, and so I can relate. Like it's a culture shock, you know. Yeah, it's a definite culture shock. So how did you get into everything that you're into now? Like I've read that you had $100 and you started Stage Ready, or you had $100 and you just went into the business. Which one? How did that go?
Yeah, you know, back to my LA roots, being around the arts and entertainment, and you know, kind of just being a product of a creative environment. Knowing I had the gifts and talents and dreams, but also seeing, you know, the downside of what that looks like was something that, you know, I kind of didn't completely embrace that, and when I say that, I mean the arts, the artist, the person that I've been blessed to kind of evolve and I'm still kind of morphing into now. I wasn't the person that was like, I'm trying to be a child star, because I saw it so early. If you tell people now, they probably wouldn't believe you, but my sister and I like recorded with Mariah Carey's producers as like little kids, and my dad wrote for the Jacksons. I met Michael Jackson when I was very small, as a very small child. So when you're around that type of, that high level entertainment industry, and then you see like the downsides of it, it can really burn you out before you even really get into it. So by the time I was 11 or 12, I was like, I had the private moments of like singing and dancing and all that stuff. But even now, a lot of people are still like, oh, I didn't even know you could paint. Man, I didn't know you did that. I kind of kept it compartmentalized.
Right.
But ultimately, when God calls you to do something and he gives you a gift that is uniquely for you, you can run from it. You can hide it under a rock. You can try to suppress it all day long. If it's something that's really given to you by him, it's going to show up, And so fast forwarding into, high school, college, my gifts, desire to be creative were really just forcing their way through because it ended up being really all I had, because my plan, which was a very traditional, structured, safe plan, was not what God had for my life. He wanted me to take risks. He wanted me to be in environments and situations where I had to completely lean on him and trust him. And those same gifts and talents that he gave me as a little girl, auditioning and singing in recording studios in Los Angeles at 7 and 8 years old, by the time I got to be 20, 21, 22, those things were kind of reemerging in my life. And so Stage Ready, which is the company that I own, was started out of necessity after college. The traditional college path just didn't work for me because I couldn't afford it. HBCUs are very expensive. Love them dearly.
Yep.
But
don't I know?
Yeah, and it became, sometimes you can really just work a bunch of jobs and just, make it happen. But there were so many other things that were going on within my family that I made the choice to put that particular, not the complete dream, but that version of it on hold and try to approach it a different way. And so that was just starting my business, Stage Ready, and, working full time with 2 computers on my desk, one doing my job and one building my company. And that was just everything that Tina is what Stage Ready offers, from choreography, placing background singers for different artists, live productions for tours and television shows, to, live event production and conferences and all that good stuff. I wanted to always be the show and the business, and so when you can't get an audition or place a song or go do a TV show, you can take those same logistical skills in the industry and provide services for various outlets and still be able to make a living. So that's kind of like the condensed version of how Stage Ready started. $100 in a dream, because I was a broke college student who had ran out of tuition and was working various part-time jobs. And I just knew that God didn't give me those gifts just to let them sit dormant and go to waste. I could help other people, and started that company and gave a lot of my services away, Craigslist and just any kind of way. And God just ordered my steps where, we ended up working with Usher's New Look Foundation and ended up doing, producing for a Celebration of Gospel when that show was on, and placing people on stuff for MTV and BET, and just out here grinding. That's the dope thing about Atlanta. There's so much opportunity here if you're willing to roll up your sleeves and almost just put yourself out there. A lot of times people only want, well, how much they paying? How much are they paying me? The first few years, we were giving our services away, but it allowed us to gain credibility. It allowed us to get that on-the-job training, that allows you to have like a really tight service that you're offering. And we were able to become, key players, and very thankful for that. So that's how Stage Ready came about.
Mm-hmm. And it's a interesting, I don't think I've ever met anyone or talked to anyone that like has talent agency, has a talent agency, so to speak, and it's also talent. So like that's a very interesting, like it doesn't happen often. So my question in this is like, so what is the process for like picking roles and auditions for your talent versus picking roles and auditions for you? Like how do you separate?
That's great. That's a great question. So the cool thing about Stage Ready is we're a boutique entertainment firm, but we're not technically a talent agency. So I think that that's very key and very important that you pointed that out. Great interviewing skills, I might say, because
I'll be trying.
as an actor, for me, like even when I'm, if I'm training with somebody, right? And the frustrating thing about sometimes training with other working actors is they're other working actors. You know what I'm saying? So you may have sessions set up to train with them. And that morning it's like, oh, I can't train with you because I'm shooting X, Y, and Z.
Right.
So people have asked me before to become an agency. And I'm not going to say that's never going to happen. I think once I achieve certain milestones in my career and things that I desire to do, that's in the cards somewhere down the line. But to kind of go back to your original point, I'm not an agent because if you're going to be an agent, you need to be completely dedicated and committed to pushing your talent forward. Okay. So we're consulted, we're consultant agency. So like an artist, wants certain types of singers on a song, we will wrangle for them and facilitate logistics and also be a part of the creative process. But that's a little bit different. And sometimes I sing in on stuff like that or help, vocal arrange and produce. But as far as like agency wise, like I'm not going to be going up for the same jobs as people that I'm also trying to book. You know what I'm saying? Like we can't be doing the same thing because ultimately most people are going to put themselves first. So I think if you're representing someone, you should always have your talent's best interest at the forefront. But, we're a little bit different because companies reach out to us for services, but it wouldn't be something that Tina Fears would be also doing. Like if I'm casting for background dancers, I'm not going to be in the room trying to dance too,
Okay. Yeah, because that was what I was wondering. I'm like, how do you balance the two?
Some people do it though. JC, some people do both. That's not a good fit. That would be a good fit for me. And I think it would be very challenging. So whenever you run across a person that's doing both, I'm going to be tuned in for that because I would like to hear how they are talent and the agent.
Mm-hmm. And so like with all of those hats that you wear, like which one do you find that you wear the most? And is that hat your favorite?
I think it's about seasons. I think there have been different seasons in my life. I'm kind of pivoting out of a season right now where I was senior consulting producer for a big beauty brand. And that was really, even as a contractor, that was what I was doing. The role kind of adjusted. Adjusted is not the correct word. It evolved over that 10-year, but that was a space that Stage Ready was in where we were just driving logistics and project management and planning and facilitating. And that was the hat for that season. That's what we were doing, so I maybe wasn't doing as much of my producing for television and film and that space. Let me not lie, because I have the tendency to do a bunch of stuff at the same time. So I was still doing some award shows and stuff like that, but it really just depends on what season I'm in. So like even as a performer, there was a season where I was doing a lot of theater, every 10 weeks or whatever, I was on stage doing some type of musical theater show. And that was a season too. So the thing I'm learning is when you have multiple gifts, it's important to just be honest with what you're able to do because you always want to give your best in whatever space you're in. And then also be in tune enough to know when the Lord is bringing something to an end and when a season is ending, So it's just like, think about a bad relationship. It's not like the relationship just the bottom falls out of nowhere. There are signs when, okay, this is strain. Strain is, this it doesn't feel good. This isn't, the last don't come as easily, so on and so forth. So I think it's important as an artist, a business person or whatever, to always be sensitive to the season that you're in and always kind of keep that antenna up where you can kind of tell when something is coming to an end. Like I knew for me, when I was performing on stage, and that was competing with me doing TV and film. I knew I had to kind of choose. And that's when I knew that season in that particular space was starting to kind of come to an end, because every time I was on stage, I needed to understudy. Tina, they hired you to be on stage and portray this role. Though they would accommodate, you never want to take a job when you can really only be there 40% of the time,
right. Right.
So to answer the question, I think, which hat do I wear most often? Creative Tina. And with creative Tina, it just has a bunch of layers to it. So the last season that I was in, I was a show producer. And this new season that I'm moving into is allowing me to be less of the logistical person and more of the artist, and that's the actor and that's the, creative and all that good stuff. So I'm thankful for this season that I'm in, and I'm keeping my antennas up, because one way you can always be pliable and be able to move is when you're aware of what's the season you're in and what's going on around you.
Right. And talking about like the stage production, because you actually answered the question. I was going to ask which one did you like more, stage or film, but you kind of answered that one. But I do, I've always wondered, what is the process in getting a show to stage? Like, how does one go about that? Because I see you do like a lot with the Aurora Theater. And so I'm like, do you have like a contract with them, or like what's the process of
put that in the atmosphere, friend? Yeah. Aurora Theater is I consider Aurora kind of like my theatrical home. Okay. Ironically, Aurora is very close to where my family and I live. We have a home in Lawrenceville, and when I was transitioning back into performing, which is very different from being a choreographer, different from being a background singer. That is you on stage. Somebody else is putting the material on you, in you, and you have to present it back to the audience. And so Aurora was was the first theater. Actually, I worked at the Strand first. That was that's like a community theater in Marietta. Okay. I did a summer at the Strand, and I started working at Aurora. And Aurora is very well respected in Atlanta for their productions, the production value they bring to the stage. Their patrons are very supportive of their shows. They do really nice long runs, which is great for actors, because long run means you get paid more weeks. Short run means you do all the work. You're up 2 weeks and it's down. Right. So I don't have, I'm not a producer for Aurora Theater, but having been a performer there, I have a great relationship with the artistic directors there, and I've been blessed to be able to kind of pitch concepts to them and different ideas, and they've said yes to them, and that also just allows them to add a wider variety of material for the community to be able to, partake of or enjoy. Because you bring a different perspective to the table. So some colleagues and I did a Aretha Franklin tribute shortly after she died, and that event sold out. It was fantastic. And then some other colleagues and I did a Black History cabaret called The Sound, which had some of Atlanta's really premier singers in it. And it was very, very well received. And so as far as getting a show up from the ground, from conception to stage, that kind of takes me back to a show I did called the African American Dance Review. It was an original show that I did with the CFED Foundation and Plateau Events. And when you're dealing with something that's an original idea, I mean, it's like conceiving a child, allowing the baby to, grow in the womb, give birth to it, raise it, burp it, change the diapers. I mean, it's the whole process, and it's a lot of work. It shouldn't be taken lightly, and there should be more opportunities for people to present new work, because that's how we grow as an artistic community. When you see and hear and feel the perspective of new artists. So, kudos to Aurora, because they give a lot of people those opportunities to bring their work, whether it be a reading or new shows that are in development, various cabarets. They're one of the theaters that will give people opportunities to do that.
Was this was it the African American experience? Was that when you worked with Brittany Inge, or was that like a different play?
So Brittany and I don't think me and Brittany. No, the African American Dance Review was something that I was the artistic director for down at the Rialto. This is that was in the early stage ready days. Okay. So you gotta remember, I started SR right out of school. So I was like a bop, like a little bopper out here with a briefcase and books and moving and shaking with people who were well established in the industry. And it was a blessing and a curse too, because you kind of had to prove yourself. But man, the wealth of knowledge that I gained being able to be a young person in the room and being fearless enough to say, I can do this. Who was a 20-something-year-old artistic director with a cast of like 40 people at the Rialto downtown? That's crazy, you know? Yeah. But in that season, that was a space that God put me in. But Brittany Inge and I have a bunch of mutual friends here in the theater community. We've done some readings together, but I don't think me and Britt have ever been in a show. We never did a show together in Atlanta that I can think of. Okay. Britt, correct me if I'm wrong. You'll hear this later, but I don't think we've actually been like on stage cast together in anything. It's just been readings and smaller projects.
Okay. Because I saw a picture with all of y'all together. Y'all was all in black.
Black. Okay, so that was a show called Wrapped Up. It was a stage reading written by Brian Jordan Jr., and she was on the creative team for that. And I was reading one of the principal roles in that show. Gotcha. Okay. So that was again, but she was on the creative team for that, and I was a cast member. Okay. You did your research. Come on. I appreciate that because it makes it a conversation. It's not like a list of questions because you've done your research and we can, chop it up. So I'm here for it.
My intention is always to make it more of like a conversation. Like I very much realized that at an early age is like, whether I want people to talk to me or not, that's what they do. So I just kind of like, I just make it easy. Like, I don't want it to be like, I want it to be easy. Like it shouldn't be stressful,
It's good. Mm-hmm. It's good.
Circling back around to this, to that Aretha Franklin stage play. So there is is it, first of all, because I don't know, is it biopic or biopic? I'll be going backwards and forwards with this.
I've heard biopic so many times. So, okay. So the show that we did was a tribute show. Right. Now we have the film. We have the film that, Jennifer Hudson is starring in, and Marlon Wayans is in, which is like a movie, like that will be in theaters. And then there is the series that Fox and Nat Geo and all of that
you're a
Cynthia Erivo is starring in. Yes,
right, and that you're a part of.
Tina Fierce is a part of that.
Okay.
Yes. Okay.
How did that come about? Is that from like a direct correlation from the play, or was that just kind of, how did that happen?
That is so ironic. No, that was Tina being an actor and auditioning for the stuff that my agent sends, like you got an audition, but again, I am faith-centered. My friends say I'm churchy. Everybody needs a churchy friend because I am someone that believes nothing happens by accident. So having put a Aretha show on its feet, and conceptualize that, and then really kind of like in a year's time, being blessed to be a part of this wonderful project is just not by accident. Mm-hmm. But that was something I auditioned for. I got the breakdown, and actors will tell you, I'm sure you've interviewed a bunch of actors, you kind of know when a part comes along, you're like, man, this is my part. Mm-hmm. In your heart, that's how you have to approach it. And you read a lot of stuff, like there's a lot of stuff that's on television now that I've auditioned for. Everybody in Atlanta that's a working artist has auditioned for. But I really believe when something is right for you, it's right. So I auditioned for it and read for it and took some risk. Kind of did opposite of what they tell you to do. Because sometimes casting will say, don't use props, don't do this, don't do that. But I was auditioning for the role of Clara Ward. And for people who know gospel, Clara Ward is the godmother of gospel music and ultimately mentored Aretha. Okay. And Clara Ward and the Ward Singers were a fantastically dressed group of women, hair, makeup. I mean, the pieces that they wore was just fantastic. I mean, they were just it. Mm-hmm. And beautiful sense of style. So when you get breakdowns, you automatically start researching, and it's different from, a drama or something that's a sitcom or whatever. These are real people. So you have to honor their legacy in what you're presenting to casting. You don't want to be putting on you really want to take on or embody the essence of that person as best you can. So I auditioned for it, and my husband read for C.L. Franklin. My son read for Little Ree, and I read for Clara, because I wanted to, sometimes you got to go big or go home.
Right.
At this point, it was in December, which was the end of the year, and it was my last TV audition of the year. It was really, it was the end. I was just like, listen, I'm going hard or going home, and that's it. And I took big risks. I'm not going to tell everybody to go out and get a bunch of people to read for you, but for me, it was something that I was willing to do something different in order to just really give casting my best in that space. So I auditioned for it, didn't hear anything for a while, and then my agent was like, "Hey, they want you to sing." Now I knew Clara Ward was a singer. I've done my research. Mm-hmm. And so in one of the sides that I did, I hummed a little bit because it said in there that she would be singing. So I'm humming, like really, really trying to put the feel of what I think she would, sound like. Ironically, they asked people to sing, and I sang and tried to sing Heaven Down. Tried to sing Heaven Down. And sent that in, and then you wait, you don't hear anything for weeks and weeks and weeks. And then at this point, Christmas has gone by, and it's like January, and it's like, okay, 2020, what you gonna do? But I just, even then I was like, I had faith, even if it wasn't that 2020 was going to be a big year, that it was going to open up some new doors. So it would be a new chapter. And, January, I think it's like 15th, it was the 16th day after my husband's birthday, I got a note from my agent that I had been pinned for it, which wasn't like, oh, you're on hold. It just means you're being considered. And then shortly later, I found out that I had gotten the part. And when she told me I was pinned, I was already claiming that was going to be my part,
Okay.
So I had already, researched that Courtney B. Vance was who was playing C.L. Franklin, and the relationship between he and Clara Ward, and all of that good stuff. And it's just unbelievable. Never lose faith, y'all. There's a little girl from, Northridge, California, who had always been around the arts and almost kind of turned her back on the gift, but found my way back to it because God said, this is what I have for you, Tina. I haven't given you all these gifts and talents just to say you're another person that likes to sing, that likes to dance. Like, I have something that I specifically am calling you to do in the season that I say you need to do it. And you just need to keep your tools sharp and be ready. And that's how I live my life.
I would. There's something to that, because it's like I also too, when I first moved to Atlanta, I did a bunch of stuff. Oh hell. But I was in a stage play for a little while. And I was actually like doing extra work, trying to act and model and stuff. And being in front of the camera is just not my thing. It's just something that I thought. And then, when you actually start doing the work, that ain't me. Like, I'm just, my gifts are more suited towards production, towards direction, towards writing, things of that nature, to actually putting together the tools to tell the complete story. So, when I kind of figured that out, I'm like, okay, well, now what can I do? My skill set kind of aligned a little bit more with, I will say, a vision that I didn't necessarily know that I had or could see. So, now that I'm kind of in it, I'm like, okay, cool. Now what else can I do? So I definitely feel and understand that, you literally can run away from it all you want. But, if you're supposed to be doing it, you really have no choice. It's going to come back and find you.
Yep, absolutely. And kudos to you for, having your aha moment and realizing that, because there are a lot of people who really waste precious time playing in a space that they like, but they may not really be great in that area, And so I think it's cool. I always, when I'm speaking and all of that, and people ask me, how do you know? How do you know if that's what you're supposed to be doing, if that's what you're called to do? Because the thing that you're called to do, like you said, it's going to show up. It will present itself, and you will find yourself doing the thing that you can like to sing all day long, but if you can't sing, baby, you can't sing. Exactly. You can like singing.
You spoke a word right now.
You can like it all day. You can like it all day, but
man.
that's not you. You know, you may have the gift of serving and serving people who are great singers and be really a great assistant or a background singer or something like that. Might not be called to the front. And I think that's when you're able to identify, you know, be okay with you and be confident and know that you have something to offer in the space that you're in.
Right. Agreed. Definitely agreed. Next question. I think we're going to come to the namesake. How has quarantine affected your day to day? And is there anything that you have developed over this stay that that surprised you, or anything that you've kept up with from the day to day that surprised you? I always give the example, brushing my teeth for me. That is a thing. I'm surprised that I have done it every day faithfully, because there are days when I don't feel like getting up out of bed. But if I can brush my teeth, I can get my day started. So, I always say that. So, like, what are some of those things?
You know what? COVID-19 and quarantine has really, and I'm going to say this, y'all hear me, has really been a blessing for me. Because when all of this stuff happened, I was juggling producing a huge beauty event. I was filming episodes of Genius. I was mothering, wifing. My husband and I were like ships passing in the night because our schedules were so all over the place. And I mean, really January, February, March, you know, preparing for a big event that was going to be happening in April. I was just burning a candle on both ends. And so when all of this happened, it just put everything on pause for me. And it allowed me to take care of Tina. It allowed me to really do some inward evaluation. It allowed me to just take some time and pause. I didn't have any text messages going off at 3 and 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, you know, asking me for stuff. My alarm isn't screaming and I'm, you know, sleep deprived and all that good stuff. So I know it's hit differently for different people, but for me, COVID really allowed me to take time to just be appreciative of my life and to take better care of myself. And so that is something as simple as eating 3 nice meals a day and being able to work out. And, you know, it was funny. One of my PAs on set was like, T, you looking a little thin there. Like, I know, like, you know, when your team is saying like, okay, sis, you need to eat a whole sandwich, you know,
right.
everybody deals with stress differently. And it wasn't necessarily bad stress. It was just so much going on. So the quarantine really was like a personal retreat, kind of. Now, of course, I want to be working and, you know, out and doing the stuff that I would normally do. But I think for me, I've kind of decided to make it like a time to just spiritually just be in the place that I need to be, do some stuff for Tina Fears and my family that I haven't been able to do because I've been serving a bunch of other folks. I think that kind of answers your question. And then I found myself back painting. You're going to get the exclusive on how I found myself back to my paintbrushes.
Okay.
If you're ready for it. That has been the newest thing. That is the new development during quarantine for me.
Painting. Okay.
So in high school, I've always been, you know, of course, a part of the creative package. I've always been someone that could draw and all that stuff. And in high school, kind of going through some of the challenges, you know, with my family life and the stuff that kind of led me to not being able to complete at Clark. Painting was my outlet. Like I was cranking out life-size paintings 3 or 4 times a week.
Oh, wow.
Acrylic is my medium of choice, my favorite. And so I wasn't singing, I wasn't dancing, but the way I was getting my creative release was through picking up my paintbrushes. And so when a couple of press releases came out, well, let me continue with that. So then I went to the Art Institute after Clark. I said, okay, well, I can't finish at this HBCU. Let me go back to, you know, my creative side. And I was at the Art Institute for a couple of years there, which was very different from the HBCU experience. But that's where I was kind of getting back into, you know, the art stuff.
Right.
And then I got into the business world and working and all that kind of stuff and just hadn't painted at all. I didn't have a desire to. People would ask me, I'm like, I don't really paint anymore. Fast forward into COVID. So right before COVID happened, my high school art teacher saw a press release. Actually, I was speaking in California and she commented on my post and said, I hope you find time to pick up your paintbrushes. And it just kind of jarred me because that was my high school art teacher. And I was a really, really great art student and got like awards and stuff my senior year. But how likely is that, she's going to send me this message, which was like, literally I got back from Palm Springs 2 weeks before everything shut down due to COVID-19. And so right before COVID happened, I went to Hobby Lobby and I bought some canvases and some paint and some brushes. And I was like, oh man, you gonna do this? You gonna pick up these paintbrushes, girl? Okay. We're gonna see what happens. And her message just that she sent me on Facebook just kind of rung out, like, in the midst of being a speaker and acting and all that, your art has always been a part of who you are, Tina. And it's really important that even when things are great, when things are down, like, never lose every aspect of what makes you who you are, because me being able to paint and all that is a part of what makes Tina who Tina is,
Right.
And so I challenged myself when I was in school. My art never had faces. The eyes were always closed. It was my abstract yet cowardly way of not approaching things that I didn't do well.
Okay.
So they never had faces. I have a painting hanging up in my home right now with this woman dancing and her eyes are closed because I just never got into that. And I challenged myself. I was like, nah, girl, you got COVID. Y'all, I don't have COVID, but right. You got COVID-19, that has everything shut down. What better time to try to really challenge yourself and face things that you didn't want to face 100 years ago,
Right.
And so I started back painting and just challenged myself to do stuff that I wouldn't, the old, baby Tina wouldn't do. And I'm finding myself, it's kind of therapeutic. I open the windows, I let the birds sing and flip through. I have tons of magazine subscriptions that I've never had time to read them. So I flip through the magazines and find inspiration. And then I have a collage technique that I do that's kind of like my upcycle way. And I collage a lot of the apparel that the pieces that that's on the different people that I'm painting. And yeah, man, I'm finding my way back. So that's the new thing I'm coming out of COVID with, is that I'm back into the visual artist. Tina Fear is a visual artist. So yeah, you heard it here first. Nobody else knows the story.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that exclusive, ma'am.
You got it. You got the exclusive.
I'm coming out of going into quarantine with a podcast. So there you go. This is literally not on the playbooks. It just kind of happened. And I was like, hey, this would be fun to do. Like, yeah, let me keep going. And here we are. I'm talking to you. So there you go.
This is great. And thank you for doing that. And, I ask questions when I'm being interviewed. Has it been, fulfilling for you to do this? Or why did you feel like this was something that was needed during this time?
I am a visual storyteller. I went from being on screen to being behind screen to picking up a camera and producing my own images to now, picking up a video camera and telling stories and different things that way. So where everything shut down, I kind of put a hold on it because I was actually going to supposed to be in Brazil for a month, making my way towards building up towards filming my documentary. And well, that's going to be on hold for a while. So, so I said, there was something I had either read or came across, and it said that, during this time, creative is going to be creative. So I was like, how do I continue to create? And it just kind of came to me, I was like, oh, well, maybe I could just do a podcast, and it I kind of brainstormed the idea for about 48 hours. And then after that, I was like, okay, first episode, let's go. Made some graphics, made some stuff. And I don't know how many episodes it is recorded at this point. Here we are.
Congratulations to you. That's awesome.
So thank you. And it kind of gets me into I guess the last question I have for you is what tips and or advice or life hacks would you give to someone that wants to enter this industry?
Without giving the cliche answers, but they're always so true, which is, you hear the thick skin and you have to be, relentless and willing to hear more no's than yeses. But I think it's really having a clear idea of what you desire for yourself and where you see yourself. Because it's one thing to kind of just be out here like old tumbleweed, wherever the wind blows, that's where I'm going. But I think everything, when you have an idea of what you want to do and the impact that you want to make as a creative, not just as an actor, you could be producer, film director, content creator, so on and so forth. When you know what what you want your end game looks like, you're very intentional about the moves that you make, the people that you connect with, the conversations that you have, the rooms that you're in, the emails that you send. And so I think beyond like having tough skin, it's like, yeah, have tough skin, but why do I need to have tough skin?
Right.
Because you need to be able to be confident enough to get rejected because, at the end of the day, you want to show your project, at Sundance, or, I am going to be one of the first African-American female superheroes legit. Like that's what I'm going to do. So when I'm in my garage working out, I'm training with that's my end game, or I'm writing because I want to make sure that I have something that has the legs that a Color Purple has, or to be able to be an example to kids who, never thought they would see a Black woman owning a film studio, so like whatever
Right.
you want your end game to be, like, I think that has to be at the forefront of what you get up and do every single day. So a lot of my friends talk about their affirmations and manifesting things. And for people like myself, it's faith, it's prayer. I think those prayers need to be very clear. Like you need to know exactly what you're praying for and be specific about that. Like I knew at some point in my career, I was going to be a part of something that was going to be a vintage. It was going to be a 1950, 1940s. It's just because that's the type of art that I love.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something I've been saying for years. And sure enough, here come Aretha, so not that I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be friends with this person, be friends with that person. But I do believe like what you envision for yourself, if you really believe that, I think that things will align for you in that manner. So I think keep the end game in mind and don't be afraid to stand on that and speak on that. That I'm going to book a film. I'm going to be writing, that my podcast will be heard by, tens of 20, 30,000 listeners, that I will have game changers on my show, stuff like that. Like, I think that's so important because we don't want to be tumbleweeds out here, just
Right.
whichever the way the wind blows us.
Right.
Because tumbleweeds get stuck in trees, they get ran over, you want to be, you want to be intentional about the moves that you make. So yeah, that's not the stereotypical answer, but I think that's something that, somebody might be able to take that little nugget and kind of revisit some things and just help them along the way. The rejection is there. You audition 50, 60, 70, 80 times before you get a yes. And then I think also kind of taking that pressure off yourself is something that a lot of actors have been kind of adopting, the mindset of just really winning the room. And the room is just being able to get the audition and be seen amongst casting. A lot of times it's like the job. No, win the room over. Like get in the room, the opportunity to audition. You've done your part because you got a shot to audition. You may not be right for that, but you could be right for something else and they'll remember you. But because if you waiting on that landing that job, baby, it'll be a sad day.
Mm-hmm. That's so funny. Me and Brittany talked about that too. All it takes is one yes. Like you could get
one yes,
1,000 no's, but that one yes could be like something that just completely changes your whole worldview, outlook. All it just takes one yes. But you just had to have.
Yes.
You got to have the perseverance to keep going to get to that yes. And then myself personally, I'm not afraid to make my own damn yes. I'm afraid, if it ain't gonna be no yes, I'll make it a maybe. So that's just me personally.
And creating your own work. I mean, that's you talked about the Aurora stuff. I mean, it was twofold because we were doing these tribute shows, but there also wasn't a lot of theater in Atlanta that Black folk could come and be. There weren't we kind of went through a little bit of a drought. Mm-hmm. A lot of us weren't in shows because there wasn't material being produced by theaters that we wanted to be in. So we gave y'all a tribute show that we all starred in because so y'all could remember like how dope we were.
Right.
So that's definitely about creating your own space, your own opportunity. And the beautiful thing is we're seeing so many examples every day. Every time I look at Deadline, every time I look at Black Film Con and all of these different outlets, you're seeing fresh new faces. Netflix has just been so wonderful to folks. The Strong Black Lead, all of that good stuff. You're seeing waves and waves and waves of us that are getting opportunities that, there once upon a time, we were young, but like in the 90s, you saw the same handful of people working on everything. Think about it.
Right.
The Halle Berry wave and the Gabrielle Union and all of them. It was like the same handful of people that were rotating. You could turn on Netflix now and literally see 40 or 50 different Black actors in various projects. They're not cycling the same people, which means there's a seat at the table for us, y'all. We just got to kick the doors down, kick the doors down and be ready when the opportunity shows up.
What is next for you, Miss Tina?
Next for Tina Fears is definitely continue to do my work with the Fearless movement. So that's like my service outlet. We do Fearless Fridays. That's something new that came about through COVID was we do our Fearless Fridays every week, which are just our motivational videos on IGTV. And so we're doing our service project, which is Beauty in the Bag. We did it last year, and that's just providing beauty products for underserved youth. Last year, this year, we're going to be sponsoring a women's shelter. So the service component is actually very, very, very important to me. And that's at the Fearless Movement on Instagram for those motivational talks and service projects. Next for Tina Fears, hopefully after the world opens back up, will be to continue filming some stuff on Genius. And then, I'm claiming to film, this year and excited about that. And just continue to grind and audition and working with some up and coming writers and directors on some new stuff, some new works, which would be super awesome. But yes, remaining in this pliable space because so much of what we knew is like, okay, this is what's going to happen next. Nobody really knows, but I do know that I can keep my tools sharp. I can remain creative, do my best to remain healthy so that when it's time to go, I can go.
Right. Be ready.
Be ready. Stage ready at the end of the day.
Oh, boy. Mrs. Fears, this has been a pleasure. I'd like to thank you for coming on the show once again.
Thank you for having me. This has been great.
And ladies and gentlemen, that's about it, y'all. We gonna be out of here. I need to get me something to eat. I went bike riding earlier today, and
yeah, you need a refill. It's time. I'm sipping on a smoothie now, but it's gonna be time for lunch. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
No problem, y'all, and we are out. That's it, guys. Thanks for listening. You can follow us on the Instagrams at the OVT Network. And you can follow me, JC, at JC from the OVT. Very simple, right? This podcast is available on Apple, Spotify, Anchor, and pretty much everywhere in between. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Leave a comment and rate us 5 stars if you were so inclined. Thank you. Quarantine Talks is a podcast that is also available on YouTube. Just type in the OVT Network and hit subscribe for all of the latest and greatest from we at the OVT. Lastly, we are an independent and Black-owned media network, guys. So if you enjoyed the content and you would like to drop a donation, you may do so on Cash App or the Venmo at the OVT Network. All one word, the OVT Network. Quarantine Talks is edited and produced by me, JC, with original music produced by Brian Haddon. Thanks so much for listening, guys. Stay safe, stay creative, and most importantly, stay sane. Find your peace, man. It's crazy out here. Laters.